Hey there everyone. Today we're going to explore everything that's possible inside of Lens Studio. Let's get started. Hey there everyone. Welcome back to Loop Coding Center's Maker's Guide. In this series we explore what we can possibly make using different artistic expression through the means of programming. Throughout the series so far, we've been messing with Lens Studio, and today we'll actually finish off, just for a minute, with Lens Studio by exploring what else is possible through the other templates, and then, after some training with Blender, which we'll be transitioning into, we'll learn how to make our own models for this program, as well as create other assets and things that can be used within this program as well. With those skills, combined with our programming skills, we should be able to use Lens Studio to its full utility and really make something that pops and catches people's attention. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into that transition, which is directly into the setup, which is already taken care of and out of the way. So with that, let's go ahead and transition into our first template for the day. So as today's setup, I'll actually just discuss material we've already covered in this series. We've covered concepts such as the distortion, transforms, and a specific XY coordinate axis or grid based points that we can modify in order to get the magic to happen with these lenses. We've also messed with segmentation, which is really just a pattern, the moving of things, and the means of different layers. Through static objects, we've learned how to import 3D objects, as well as learning about a couple of 3D file types along the way. Past that, we've also learned about the material editor in Lens Studio, and learned a bit about how basic lighting, how basic colors, transparencies, whatever the matter be, can affect what a 3D model looks like, how shiny it is, how translucent it is. And with that, we also touched on what you can do in Lens Studio in terms of transforming and or covering up facial features. With that, we finished off, we didn't finish off, but we touched on the normal 2D animation as well when we went over 2D assets inside of Lens Studio. And moving forward, like I had stated, we'll focus more on the 3D aspect to see if we can introduce our own 3D animations as well. But for today, we'll go ahead and start out with the full body trigger. As I had stated at the beginning of this video, we'll be doing a quick rundown of each of these templates. So to get started, I know we have a couple left, we'll go ahead and get a quick understanding of what's left. With the rest of the templates, most of what we have going on, as I had already stated, is machine learning based. For today, we'll go ahead and focus on how these projects are structured, as well as what is making their underlying systems work, without going too deep, because then we'd have to study machine learning. But for this instance, what we're looking at is essentially a lens with the full body triggers, where we have a script running in the background, constantly checking to see if a certain condition is met. Based on that, we have different textures, different animations, and different colors that can occur that we are seeing here as a result of this camera or screen triggering events based on the machine learning. With that, we have a couple of triggers here that we can utilize in order to get things to happen. With these, we find that the lens would adjust accordingly, and really, if you aren't looking to get too deep into the machine learning, what you can do here is take the pre-made machine learning models, utilize them based on their names, and if you want to be looking at how to do that, you'll find that here under object tracking hint and script that you'll have a couple of examples to work off of. Well, actually scripts, helpers, as well as tweens are a different thing. But with this material, you should be able to take at least the template of different body language and translate that into different events based on what you can modify here at the material editor in the end. So with that, we move on to our next template. Next, we transition into the full body attachments. Here we'll find that we have the same triggers that we did in the previous template, and in this instance all we have is some different logic in the material editor, as well as different placement for the attachments. For example, here we can see that if we disable each of these attachments separately, that each of them actually directly affects where the overlay is based. With these, you can see that they're essentially defined as meshes and or things that are placed on top because they represent filling a 3D space, but at the same time only project a 2D representation. With this, we'll find that we can kind of get creative and we can have these effects where things wiggle in and out of space, but also be a lot more lightweight than an actual 3D static object would be. So with that, we have something very similar to what we saw in the previous template. However, in this instance, we'll be messing more with meshes than we would with textures. Alongside this, we also have a very similar scene, and here you can see that it's really just placed over where it expects the camera to be pointed. Nothing too fancy here, aside from the machine learning that will identify where your body is being tracked. And in this case, there's actually not too much machine learning, because all it does is track certain points based on the model that Snapchat already uses. So with that, you don't have to worry about any of that work. On to the next template. Now we transition into the style transfer. Here, we sadly really cannot do too much. The more research I did into this specific lens, the more that I found that you really have to train your own model from your own data set, from your own set of images, whatever the case be. There's a lot of work that has to go into that. This filter in specific. And really, there's nothing wrong with that. However, for the case of today's video and my own production, this is a lot of work. And really all we have is the ability to choose the ML component that is available here, and maybe change a couple of the inputs in terms of the width, the height, whether we want it to interpret this in a certain orientation. But here you'll even find that if I do a rotation, you won't find too much of a difference in the pattern because it's more stylistic and it can be transferred in both ways, so the model is smarter than the actual system that's interpreting it. So with that, don't have too much to offer here. Let's move on to the next lens. So next up is our hand gesture template. With this, we have a machine learning object or model that was trained to look for certain triggers. In this case, just like in the full body trigger or the style transfer that we saw. But in this instance, we do have access to the model, but again, it's something that's been trained and minimized into this really compact, bite-sized code that is really great for lightweight applications like this. However, it's great because it's something that avoided hundreds of hours of programming. But with that, all we need to focus on is what we can do with this filter. And what we can do with this filter is based on what we have here with the hand gesture controller. Here we can modify the triggers and what happens as a result, as in terms of what value they're provided and or what event they trigger in order to have something happen on our screen, have something happen on our lens. Here in this example, we'll have the model tell us or instruct us on what hand signal to give. We can play around with this logic and maybe build something that turns your bunny ears into the face of a bunny right over top. Maybe you can do a hand puppet sort of situation with certain hand gestures. But with that simple understanding, we'll transition into our next template. Now for our final lens, we'll go ahead and look at the face expressions. Here we have a system that pays attention to your facial expression and or follows along based on how your face is moving. Now with this, all we have is a very simple 3D model. You'll actually find that if I go ahead and actually remove the eyes, that it's a lot creepier than you'd anticipate. But with this simple system, you're allowed a template to work off to simply modify the eyebrows, the cheekbones, and the mouth movement of a character. With that, we also have events tied to the eyes of our characters. However, our focus will be specifically on the left and right eyeball. Well, specifically on the eyeballs. With this, we can control the eyelids as well, and through this logic, we have these events occur based on our certain facial expressions. In terms of what can actually be modified here is the actual meshes that are used to represent the eyes, and you'll actually notice that there's an inner and an outer eye. The outer eye is used for this glassy eyeball look, and the inner eye is for the actual texture and or mesh of the eyeball. One gives you the illusion of roundness, the other gives you the illusion of an eye. With this, we also have the transparent face mesh. So if we remove this, we'll find that the mesh doesn't actually come over the face on our lens, but alongside this, we have a script that will keep track of what expressions are being displayed on the screen. With that, that's something that Lens Studio already has pre-programmed, so all that you have to do is modify the mask to your liking. And with that, we'll end off our short-lived Lens Studio series in the Maker's Guide for now, but come back to it in the future. We'll take a quick hiatus and move on to Blender, and from there, we'll be able to learn to make our own 3D models for this program. So, until next week, have a nice one.